Hello, this video will show how I load CENTOS on a VM. CENTOS is essentially equal to Red Hat. So if you have an interest in learning Red Hat, I suggest that you Google CENTOS, download CENTOS and work with that. The difference is CENTOS is the development version, so it's a little ahead of the Red Hat OSs. But the big difference is that Red Hat wants you to have a support contract with them, where CENTOS is still all freeware. You have access to all of the same software and everything. As best I can tell, there's really not any different. So if you see here, I've actually got an ESX server that actually came free with a old server I bought, R900, a Dell R900. That's for another video. So I'm going to start by launching the remote console. This allows me to actually see what's going on with the OS, and it is going to take it a minute. And so it has powered on the server and booted from CENTOS. I'll get into how to use ESX later. So it's going to ask you a couple of questions, like do you want to install or test, and of course testing kind of is okay if you have a media shipped to you, but it's really not useful here. Here I have an ISO I've downloaded and I'm okay with it, so I'm telling it to install. Hit the enter key. And it is going through post. And your video is not frozen, it just takes a minute to come up. There we go. So now we're going to choose English and English, because that is me, I speak English. Hit continue. Now this is the primary screen that we're going to be working with, so you're going to see there's several sections in here that we have to deal with, and it is currently probing things. So I don't really like that time zone, so I'm going to click here. I'm going to click on Chicago. I happen to be in Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I wanted AM PM, so done there. The local media installation source is fine, that's what it's booted from. The minimal install is going to install just the OS. It's just enough to where you can get it up and working, but you're going to have to start installing packages almost immediately. It's enough to have a network on there. For time, I'm going to go ahead and do the minimal install. However, if you select this, you can see there's all these different choices. I think the most common thing people might choose is server with GUI or GNOME desktop. That's if you want to have the typical graphical interface. But if you're okay with command line and you want to add every bit of software that you're going to use, you can do minimal. So I'm going to hit done. Once you select that, if you have anything other than minimal, what it'll do is it'll spend a lot of time making sure it has everything it needs for prerequisites. So let's go down to partitioning. It automatically selects 500 and automatically selects automatically configure partitioning. I don't like its default, so I select I will configure and then hit done. It will then take me to this screen. Here I tell it to go ahead and make them automatically, so I have a template to work from. So I hit automatically, and you can see it's created a default mapping. Boot is a partition that has kernels and things in it. I have found this not to be large enough for my home system. I can't imagine why I would want a /home, and I can't imagine why I want all my space in there either. and then my root is tiny, tiny, tiny. So basically, if you install it with this kind of defaults, you're going to be running out of space almost immediately for anything you want to do. So I'm going to hit, and I'm going to have home selected. I'm going to select negative. It cleared it, and as you can see, it put it in available space down here. So what I'm going to do is take select boot, and I'm going to up it a little bit. That way it can keep several kernels around. Swap, that is really your own opinion. It used to be really important to systems, but it really isn't used as much anymore. But I'm going to go ahead and add a little swap to it, and then as you can see, I've still got quite a bit of space here. So what I'm going to do is take and add the 50 to the 437, so that'll give me 487. I'm going to hit enter. Sometimes you click someplace else, that forces it to go ahead and do the math, and there you have it. So that's the way I typically set mine up, because I know if I'm going to fill up this. If you are doing this in production, you may want to separate out where you keep your users, or you may have some other method that you do. So I'm going to select done, accept changes. Now I'm going to come in here to network host name. Here is where I'm going to give it a host name. Pierce.home. That's how you give it a host name. And then I'm going to configure the Ethernet. The V6, I don't know of anybody using it yet, so I'll set that to ignore. The IPv4, that is DHCP. If we wanted it to be DHCP, that would go get an address off of my wireless router, but what I want to do is manual, because I want to give it an address. Let's see what I've got. Tell you what, let's give it this web address. In fact, we'll go rename this as web in a minute. So I'm going to add and give it the address 192.168.1.105. Most NAT masks 255.255.250, and gateway, that is my router to get out, 192.168.1.1. So you can see I've got a pretty vanilla plain. This is probably one of the most common, if not, well, I suppose you could have a 0 here to be, say yours just common. So these are all the IP addresses that are behind my residential gateway or firewall. DNS servers 192.168.1.200, and search domain is pierce.home. You know what? I'm going to add another one. Use commas. So 192.168.1.1. That way this thing can look up internet addresses outside or my own internal DNS server. I'm going to hit save on this. As I mentioned, I'm going to go change this to web, apply. I'm going to turn on my networking, and then I'm going to hit done. So that's pretty much all the setup. Now what we do is we hit begin installation, and basically it's asking for a root password. I've typed root twice. I'm not worried about that because I'm going to blow this away when I'm getting done. If you do something short like this, it forces you to hit the done twice to say, yes, I'm done. New user creation, I have no idea why it forces you to make one. If you don't make one now, it'll force it later. So I'm just going to make one Lee, and this puts me in the group as root. And then password is going to be, I told it not to require password. What this is going to do is probably log me in as Lee by default. Let me go ahead and do this. Lee and done, And as you can see, it's still installing in the background while I'm telling it the passwords and stuff to set. So it's basically going to run like this for a while, and eventually we'll end up with a button that says reboot.